Hello, this is Ed Keay-Smith from the Business Marketing Show. Thank you for tuning in to the episode today. Here with the co-host, of course, Mr. Brendan Tully. How are you, Brendan?
I'm well, Ed.
Brendan from the Gold Coast. And we have our special guest today. We have Chris Smoje from dimecustomerservice.com.au to talk about customer service and customer experience. And I think it's a critical topic that should be combined with marketing, because if you're doing a poor job of customer service and customer experience, all your marketing dollars have just been wasted. So thank you, Chris, for coming on the show. Good to have you on, mate.
Pleasure, Ed. Look, nice to see you again. We've known each other for a while, and look, Brendan, great to meet you as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so Chris and I know each other. We've initially met at what is now called Professional Speakers Australia, PSA, which used to be NSAA, National Speakers Association Australia. And we would often see each other at meetings and have conversations. And the last time I saw Chris was when my wife Lois was presenting at the Australian Institute of Management here in Perth, giving a talk on career-related stuff. And Chris was there, and Chris bought a copy of Lois's book. So he automatically got an invite to the podcast. I'm only kidding, that wasn't the reason. But Lois did say, you should have Chris on the show. It was actually it was actually Lois that made me rethink of you. So it is thanks to Lois.
Well, Lois, if you're watching, thank you very much. I hope you're watching.
Don't thank us yet. We haven't yet, mate. We haven't finished. When you're finished, you might think it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
So you've had quite a history working with lots of different companies in this sector of customer service and customer experience. And it's a big topic, and there's lots of misconceptions. A lot of people relate it to just physically retail stores and what it's like when you go into a retail store, but that's only one part of the story. So let's go back a little bit. We'll reverse into the story of Chris and how you got into this space in the first place. So I know there's part of your story is tied in with doing some work with Disneyland. So start off from there. What was that experience all about?
Well, look, my background really is that traditional learning and development, and I hate saying it because it makes you shudder about learning and development. It's all about compliance and programs and return on investment, and I did that in a number of organisations, and I quickly found out that when I was managing a learning and development budget and running a learning and development department, there was the compliance and the technical side of training, the OH&S stuff that was important, and I really didn't enjoy it. My passion was the customer service training, so to speak. So I took a liking to that, and I was fortunate after spending a few years doing customer service training or learning and development with Qantas. At the time, back in 2010, when they launched the airports of the future, next generation check-in, the automated bag drops, I was involved with that project from a training perspective. And after that project was completed, I saw that I saw how being involved with customer service as part of an experience for a huge rebrand in such a massive organisation was so important when they threw dollars at it and they wanted to make it work.
Yeah.
So when that project was finished, I guess reinvented my career in the theme park industry and came and worked for Perth's very own theme park, Adventure World. And that was a fascinating thing coming from Australia's largest airlines, Perth's biggest theme park. Very different budgets, very different size, but ultimately it's all about service and safety. And if you think about that transition, basically from the aviation industry to the theme park industry, it is just an industry that's obsessed about service, obsessed about fun, obsessed about experiences. And I think every organisation can learn a lot from the theme parks. So to get to your question there, a few years into my career as a head of guest experience, I got the opportunity to head over to Florida and attend a an executive business education course run by the Disney Institute. Probably the best experience I've had from an educational perspective in my life. The Disney Institute is well regarded as the place where organisations from, healthcare to whatever it may be internationally come to Disney to learn about their time-tested principles.
Yeah, I actually wasn't aware that was the thing. I thought it was only an internal thing until I started reading more about it from getting exposed to you talking about it earlier on your website and on LinkedIn, etc. That they did that for other companies. I wasn't aware of that. So how long ago was that, Chris?
That was 2014. And it's just an interesting thing to distinguish because many of your listeners might be thinking the same thing. Disney have Disney University, which is Disney U, and that's for their internal staff. They have a huge college for anyone who works at the Disney organisation. Then their second arm is the Disney Institute, and that is purely for external companies to come and learn things the Disney way.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's great. I didn't know that it existed. So was that something you had to pay for yourself, or were you sent from a company, or how did that work?
Oh, look, persuaded and negotiated and demonstrated that return on investment, I was sent. And I was actually just looking the other day, just as a matter of interest for anyone watching now, with the exchange rate, a week-long program is around about 10,000 Australian dollars. Look, sounds like a lot, but I thoroughly, anyone listening or watching, I'd recommend it anyway if they can.
Yeah, cool. Fantastic. And so that led you into this space that you're in now. So when did you start Dime Customer Service?
So I finished the Disney Institute course, end of 2014. And by the start of 2016, I was out on my own. Now, the Disney Institute course really gave me, I guess, the inspiration. And I got to see how service on a huge scale is so important, number one. And I've been doing customer service, learning and development in organizations for probably at that stage about sort of close to 10 years. And I started to get a lot of really kind of cool ideas, content ideas, models, methodologies that I had sort of kind of created in my mind after working or spending 10 years in organizations. And I thought, look, this is such an inspiration after being on this course. I'm going to go and try to spread my wings, and rather than just helping one company go through a period of customer service transformation, which by the way can take years, I thought, why can't I do it for as many organizations as possible? Okay,
and so you're working across a whole host of different industries at the moment. Where are the times you feel you're spending the most? What sort of sectors do you get called upon the most?
We were just chatting, obviously, with Brendan just off air before about this. The sectors that get the most attention, I think, would be retail, and hospitality and tourism. But to be honest, it's one of those industries that lack money, so to speak, lack the will, lack the burning desire because their staff are transient. It's the most important, but that's the one that gets the most attention. However, seldom the only industry I work with. Local government is huge at the moment in terms of activating their precincts, their customers, their businesses. Local government are very, very in touch with their customers, and they certainly, particularly here in Western Australia, are definitely interested. And also another sector, just to give you a third, that's really transformed in the last year is the aged care or disability care industry, I should say. Just with the NDIS, putting that power back into, or the funding back into the customer's hands, where customers now have the choice as to where they go to access disability care. So they're probably the three, if I gave you a bit of a cross-section of how customer service is not just face-to-face retail anymore.
No, and look, so that's where a lot of people have that sort of daily experiences. It could be going to a coffee shop or in a retail store. So that's probably what most people are thinking of. But in terms of the space that Brendan and I work in, because we're sort of in the digital space, we do have clients that have, front-facing in terms of customer clients as well in retail. But most of the stuff that Brendan and I are doing is to do with digital.
Mm.
So do you find that you're getting in that space a lot more now?
I think, and I was only just talking about this the other day, and let's use retail as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll try and keep this condensed. There's no doubt that online shopping, as an example, being digital, is huge or is taking momentum across the world. Yet at the same time, retail centres like the Westfield Group, as an example, are putting millions in not just, putting a coat of paint on their shops. They're creating piazzas, outdoor precincts, dining, pubs. They're making retail a face-to-face destination experience, which suggests that face-to-face or brick-and-mortar stores aren't dead. But to go back to what you said about digital, I think organisations at the moment, part of their service offering or that service experience is that they'll have something online, online stores, chatbots, whatever it may be, social media, social integration, whatever it may be, but they must also have that human connection face-to-face, because remember, online, you don't really get that human connection or that face-to-face interaction versus in-store or in person.
Yeah, what have your experiences been with that, Brendan?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on the podcast that the most successful. So I do a lot of e-commerce consulting, Chris. So one of generally we have this model or framework that you need to replicate the in-store experience online, and I think a lot of businesses have this kind of expectation that it's high tech, low touch, where it needs to be high tech, high touch, and you need to. I was having a conversation yesterday with a client that, in today's world, the website needs to replicate what's happening when someone walks into the physical retail store, or, the business or the office, and the most successful businesses do that. I'm curious, what's a typical engagement for you look like? Is it training? Is it consulting? Is it a mix of that? Like, how do you work with clients? Like you said, it's it can be a long process. The change can be a long process. Is it? Because like customer service, I don't really know anything about what you do. Like, what good customer service is as a customer, but it's kind of this nebulous blob. Like, how do you work with clients? I'm curious, because we have one business I'm involved with is growing. I mean, I wouldn't say we have a customer service problem, but it's one area that needs a lot of love because it's a higher volume business. It's an online business. I'm just struggling myself right now to kind of get the staff up to speed to meet the expectations the customers have in terms of responsiveness and turnaround time. So, can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, I can. Look, when I was talking about all these ideas I had in terms of service, and I even evaluated, why is customer service a problem? Customer service is not new. It's been around for, I reckon 2,000 years ago on the River Nile, they were practicing customer service as they traded goods. It's not a new topic, yet it seems to, at least since the internet started, or even since telephone call centers started in the 60s, it hasn't really evolved in terms of the way we talk about customer service. They talk about it as you've got to smile, you've got to give eye contact, you've got to, those cliche things like, the 3-meter rule, and when people hear that, they roll their eyes and they get disengaged. So as part of that offering, I made it very clear that I had to come up with something compelling enough and something long enough that wouldn't just be a one workshop wonder. CEOs and business leaders at the moment, as I'm sure you're aware too, even though times are tough, the economy might not be performing as well. I think CEOs are more understanding to the fact that even if they have $1,000 to spend, spending $1,000 on one session, as an example, is not going to achieve anything. So they're actually putting, more money into a long program, and that gets into what I do, so that it's a combination of potentially workshops or even just a keynote presentation in an organisation, or some one-on-one tutoring. I probably wouldn't say coaching in a way, but implementing stuff from the classroom into the workplace, on the floor, advisory meetings. So for instance, if there's a new project or a new as an example, I'm working with a client at the moment who is opening a new store in retail. So we'll be involved with helping them with that new store as well. So there's no limit as to how far you go. It's just a question as to, does the business owner want to invest in a program, which a lot of them are, or do they just want to look at one skill or one focus area, or one professional development day, and do something very short and targeted and very inspirational. So full ends of the spectrum. And one thing I want to just also say is that there's been some organisations that don't even have a face-to-face business, and a lot of the things that I work with, I can actually apply to the online world. You can take the principles of customer service and just implement them online instead of face-to-face. There shouldn't be a large contrast, in my opinion, and it seems to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, completely agree. Go, Brendan. You had something else to say?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, as a starting point, where will you start? What's the kind of starting point you have with a small to medium business looking to improve their customer service?
Yeah, Ed mentioned earlier that he met me through Professional Speaking, or Professional Speakers Australia, and one thing I don't do enough of that I thoroughly enjoy is keynote presentations now, and at conferences. Now, I find that any organisation is a starting point. No matter how good you are, the topic is still mundane. People think, customer service. They think, it's either a compliance exercise or, someone in the team is stuffed up, so we've all got to go through customer service training, or, this is just, tick boxing stuff, or we can't learn anything new when it comes to service. So my very first starting point is to get everybody in the room and just do a 1 hour, 90-minute punchy session that opens their minds up. Gets them thinking differently, gets them thinking, actually customer service isn't that bad. It felt like we started 5 minutes ago, but it's been a whole hour. So that's my starting point. And I try and recommend that to everybody, because if you're not getting the staff on board at the start, and remembering they have those negative connotations when it comes to customer service, that's the battle that I always like to deal with at the start, rather than getting into big programs and making people feel uncomfortable. You're taking them on a very not long journey, but everything you do is for a reason, and that's how I start.
Mm-hmm. And how do you delineate? Well, like, what's the boundary between sales and customer service? Obviously, very related. Is there a framework that you use to kind of separate the two? That, in a physical retail experience, they're kind of rolled into one, but in other businesses, there's very clear sales guys and customer service. So what are your thoughts on that, or do you have a way of framing that?
Well, I don't spend any time dealing with sales. I don't run sales training. It's so funny. Sometimes you get phone calls, and I'm sure you guys get this in your particular work as well. They call up and they say, "We need a sales trainer," and I say, "You mean customer service?" And they say, "Yeah, customer service sales. That's what we mean." And you say, "No, customer service." They say, "Yeah, customer service sales." So I don't broach in the area of sales. I do have some, modelling and metrics around how service does lead to physical improvements in the organisation. That's the starting point. But then I want to also add another industry I do a lot of work with, and that's the car sales industry. And what I typically find is they are firstly moving towards customer service and customer experience. You can only flog, and even in the building industry, if they're not building houses and selling houses, they're not making any money. So they tend to put more into service and sales, because there's no other way that they can make money. So I feel that there's a little bit of a shift between engaging sales coaches and sales trainers versus going to customer service. But even in the car sales industry, I think a lot of the car sales industries that I've worked in, they've already engaged someone to do sales, and they bring me in to
They're two very different things, because as I mentioned in earlier conversations with you, Chris, I come from a customer service background in terms of what I did. in several different industries. But then I started going into more sales-based industries. I was selling new homes and real estate for a few years. And a lot of the guys who I worked with in sales, that was all I knew was the sales. They completely fell over with the back-end customer service or the experience. And the whole time that I was selling homes, I never had a deal fall over, as they would call it. And typically they would fall over for many reasons, usually because the salesman told them a lot of crap and promised things that they were never actually going to get. Surprise, surprise. But also it was the experience around how they were getting dealt with after the sale. And that can often be something that people have a really terrible time with, is they get promised the world, and then when it comes to actually delivering the goods, there's zero service and zero good experiences. How do you see that? Is that a common thing you come across?
Yeah, definitely. And we can already start to see how this typical program would unfold. But what you just said then is really an example of an issue with culture. Now, I'm not an expert on culture. I don't profess to be. But one probably key thing that is related in culture, as you just said then, is, the salesman will promise everything, but the aftercare person, the after-sales person, either can't deliver or doesn't deliver on the promise from the salesperson, and there's that tension there. So the first thing that I focus on is you've got to, or one of the things I focus on is this internal customer service, serving others internally. Now, if I can probably just simplify it in maybe one or two ways, the first thing is removing those lines of hierarchy, and that it becomes invisible where everybody is trying to do something for the customer. The thing is that often we find, the after-sales person is too afraid to go to the salesperson and say, look, John or Mary, when you're selling the car, can you do X, Y, Z? Because the salesperson's too protective of their job, and they can't do anything that will take more time because they don't have enough time as it is. But at the same note, the aftercare person has a harder time dealing with it. But this problem exists because nobody's comfortable with challenging one another for the best interests of the customer. Debate when it comes to customer service in an organisation is actually quite healthy. The organisations that do succeed are the ones that break down the silos and do whatever it takes, to do things in the best interest of the customer. And also, that was the first part. And the second part is that a lot of organisations don't even treat their staff as customers. So they'll say, oh yeah, the guys in sales or the guys in finance. And that barrier, whilst it is a huge cultural and teamwork and leadership piece, I think one thing that I do work a lot with is getting them to feel comfortable delivering internal customer service, because ultimately what the customer sees on the outside of the organisation is a direct reflection of what's happening on the inside in some form.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why when you go to somewhere like Disneyland, all of that sort of stuff is seamless, and everyone, all the departments are working cohesively to give that experience to the end user / visitor. I know when I was there at the Disneyland in California at Anaheim, it was mind-blowing, and just how organised, efficient, friendly it was. It was the happiest place on earth. And I was fortunate to be there with my daughter on the 50th anniversary. It was a great year. They had lots of additional stuff they were doing. But so if you were to give customer service focused businesses, which they all should be, what are some of the core things you would say that people need to start working on first in terms of making improvements from where they are now?
I'll start. There's a lot, but I'll start with probably the key basics, and I've sort of started around these 4 basics, and the programs evolve from there. But you mentioned in the introduction my practice or business is called Dime Customer Service, and just behind me here is the E of Dime, but the wall has all 4 of them coming through. But Dime is an acronym that stands for Deliberate Interactions memorable experiences. And if you just take those 4 things in isolation, put them together, it really is where businesses need to start. And I'll just go through them, 30 seconds on each.
Yep.
Deliberate is about intent, consciousness, being careful. Deliberately make customer service part of a business culture. Deliberately talk about it in meetings, in briefings, in reward and recognition programs, in recruitment, in training. Be deliberate. Everything happens for a reason. So that's the D. I, interactions. Having meaningful human-to-human connections with customer service interactions instead of transactions. So transactional mindsets are, that next please, next please, next please. Yeah. They print transaction at the top of a receipt, but having that interaction, that's the second part. The M is about being memorable. And to be memorable, you effectively need to, and I don't know if there's any lawyers watching this at the moment, but you need to remove reason and logic or the rational side of work to be memorable. If things occur the way they're supposed to occur, nothing's memorable about that. It's as expected. So it's about dialing into your processes, procedures, the back end of your organization and saying, well, what can we do that removes logic, that removes reason, and can be memorable so people can talk about it at family barbecues. And the E, as you can see just behind me here, is that experience. And I know we've sort of glossed over service versus experience, but making your staff or your team be empowered to deliver a total brand experience at every touch point, including the website, including even the car park, the lighting, the signage, the what else? Even the marketing material, that consistency, the theming of an organisation, creativity. I've said physical and virtual environment, but just the systematic ways of serving creates that overall experience. And when you put all 4 together, it really is the secret recipe to service excellence.
Yeah, it's great. It's good acronym. And in my mind, customer service it's a standard default that should be there all the time. But the experience side of things, the experiences are what makes people remember your business, either in a positive way or in a negative way. And people will talk about that in either form. And that's where people and companies who are out there not working on this sort of stuff, they really have wasted all of their energy up to the point where they've been doing the marketing and the sales if all this falls over. And I know it's all interwoven from the whole, the start to finish. But often there seems to be much more of a focus on the marketing and sales than there is on the customer experience, in my viewpoint. And that's what stands out to me as a customer, is that experience.
Yeah, so that's a good point, because as you've defined, the experience is really whatever the customer perceives it to be. Every customer will take away their own experiences from it. So it's about, and you can't change that. So it's about empowering staff, and that's why I only do service. You empower, but when I say service, you're empowering staff to not only be aware of how they interact, but also to be aware of that physical environment, all of the other things that account to that experience or that contribute to that experience. It's about making them aware of all of that. I also feel this whole business of the journey is a huge thing too, because people think of customer service or customer experience as a journey. I'm going to be a bit bold and say, look, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear the word journey is a long time. I'm packing, I'm going to Europe. Journey, I know journeys can be pleasurable, but to me, if we keep thinking about things as a journey, it's a long time. And even that journey for customer service excellence, people think, I'm going to go on a journey, and then when I get to the end of it, I'll be exceptional, or I'll have exceptional service. Whereas it's about starting off on day one, being exceptional in everything we do, role modeling from the start, and doing things with customers that doesn't make it feel like a journey. Yeah, you can call it a journey in your mind or map it as a journey in your mind, but it ultimately is, it shouldn't be thought of as a journey in that regard. I think that's where your point where I think organisations sometimes go off course or maybe misguided with this whole experience thing because they overcomplicate it.
Yeah, and look, living in where I do, and some people know where I live in Subiaco. And Subiaco's had a bit of a challenging time in the retail sector, and we're just talking about retail now as an example. And there's a main strip, a retail strip called Rockaby Road in Subiaco, and there's been shops closing down over the last several years, like, there's no tomorrow. But there are ones that are also thriving, and there's an example of one particular retail food business in Subiaco, and there's a lot of coffee shops in Subiaco, but this little fish and chip shop opened up in Subiaco at basically the same time another one opened up. Now, the other one that opened up is closed down, but the one that is still thriving and is always busy has all those qualities going on. Great customer service. They make you feel welcome and friendly, high quality of food, best fish and chips we've ever had in our life. So that's saying something. So often I think businesses are struggling and they often want to blame the economy, they want to blame other things, but really if they had a closer look at what they're doing, it can often be them that is causing the problem, and having a terrible customer experience is a quick death for a business, isn't it?
You're certainly right, and I'll go on from that exact example here. A couple of misconceptions that organisations have. Firstly, as we've seen when it comes to Westfield, face-to-face is becoming a destination. Now, you mentioned Subiaco. There's a place in the Perth CBD called Piccadilly Arcade.
Yep.
And it looks like a derelict part of an abandoned town because every, retailer, when one retailer goes, the next retailer will go, and it's a domino effect. And that might happen again in the Gold Coast, in Brisbane,
yep.
Wherever. The key thing there is that people blame parking, they blame, trading, they blame the economy. But if they offered a service experience, as you just said, Ed, 100%, but the key thing is to offer it together. So don't think of the Chinese restaurant next door versus my fish and chip store as being competitors. We both equally need to be delivering exceptional service. In fact, as an organisation, as a small business, they should be saying, hey, can we combine, the Chinese restaurants funds, our fish and chip funds, and let's do some work together in customer service.
Yeah.
And make that precinct so that customers go there and they say, right, oh, well, look, I feel like fish and chips tonight, so I'm going to go there. But, the Chinese restaurant looks good too. It's buzzing. There's good atmosphere. And atmosphere is really everything. So I think if organisations stop thinking about it being a dog-eat-dog world and blaming other things, as soon as one retailer goes next door, they think, oh, yes, there's no competition. All the customers will come to me. But no, they won't. They're going to go to other places that offer that experience, that destination where they can spend the whole afternoon or the whole day or the whole weekend. So I think the competitive mindset needs to change slightly. And such an important part about that overall experience there, that especially for small businesses, if you work with them, about working together rather than against each other.
Yeah, great example. I've seen some versions of that happen in other areas of Subiaco, not just on Rockaby Road, where they did that exact thing. They all, about 10 businesses got together and made that sort of conscious effort to share the workload of getting customers back into their space. But again, it all has to be done together, because if one's lets the side down, then it can then have an effect on the rest. So that, I think that would be a fairly challenging thing to pull off. I think it would be hard enough just getting your own business solidified and working properly, but trying to get 10 other businesses would be a challenge. So, but worth looking into for sure.
Just one other tip I could just think of then, and we're talking about Perth here. We've got a brand new stadium, 60,000 capacity for organised for patronage. And I'll give you just one example about that whole memorable, that rational decision making that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Just imagine you had 60,000 fans coming to the football, and after the football, they want to go and have a beer or have some food. So you've got 60,000 fans effectively walking past your shop or your restaurant. Yet you've still got the sign out the front that says no sportswear, no scarves, no branded material or whatever. Because that's our dress code. We don't want to allow people to come in, and effectively, that's an example of a process where they've got the potential customers right in front of them, and this is one store, not talking about others together, but they have these processes that basically turn customers away. That customers then will say, well, then I'll go somewhere else, and they're walking right past. So it even boils down to that when there actually are customers there as well.
Crazy. I mean, funnily enough, Brendan and I are not football followers, which we talked about in our last podcast. We're the only two Australian males that don't follow football, unless I don't know whether you do. The fact that you're talking about it probably means you do, Chris.
I keep an eye on it. Brendan, I don't know, mate, you might be an NRL, or not even NRL, big
nothing.
And,
yeah, I'm a muser. I'm a drummer, so I don't pay attention to sport. But
I know, Brendan, you're from the Gold Coast. I was fortunate enough to get to the opening ceremony of the games, the Commonwealth Games, this year, and it was a lot to report from it, but spectacular to see the city light up for a sporting event.
Yeah, Brendan's a bit of a javelin thrower, aren't you, mate?
He's so full of it, Ed. I've no interest in sports at all.
Oh dear. So, and part of a good customer experience is having fun, isn't that right, Chris? You've got to have fun. Disneyland is all about fun. What's the point of having a customer experience that is serious? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think you're right there, and that's what the Disney Institute is all about. And even me, in my experiences, spending about 5 years in the theme park industry, there's a lot we can learn. And I think organisations that see their jobs too seriously, are at risk of becoming obsolete. But the one problem I've got here, and this is what all the listeners might be, or viewers might be thinking now, is that when it comes to customer service, people tend to take what I say and completely turn it into the most furthest opposite thing. For instance, you might have someone who's an accountant watching this program now, and they're hearing me say, you've got to make the experience fun. They'll take that to mean, we've got to negate our legal obligations and our legal processes and do dodgy tax returns. That's what they honestly think. And I never said that. And I'm going to say it again that I didn't say that. But the point is people take things completely that it's actually saying it's not white, not black. It's black or white. It's grey. That's what customer service is. It's the grey part in the middle, where you don't just be like Disney, but you can take some learnings from what Disney do and see how it will apply to your business. Because at the end of the day, the customer isn't, when they get their tax return done, they're not buying Disney. They want to buy the uniqueness and the authenticness of that particular firm.
Yeah, good point. You still got to work within the rules of the business. So, anything else, Brendan, that you have for Chris before we?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the customer service is hard for people to wrap their heads around, particularly in business. Is there any? Do you have any frameworks for measuring customer service, or can we apply KPIs to customer service? Because it's hard to say, internally in an organisation, it's like it. At the end of the day, it comes down to numbers. Is there a methodology you have, or a way to measure it that you can tie it back to numbers, or stick some hard edges around it to say yes, we've improved. This is how we're 20% better, or whatever. I mean, there's Net Promoter Score. I don't know if there's any other way that customer service can be quantified, I guess, is my question.
Absolutely, and it's a good question. I'll give you, there's just two answers that I've got to give you to that. The first one is people tend to think of, like a CEO will say, why is our bottom line not, why is our bottom line red? Why is the bottom line not green? What's going on with our bottom line? The answer to the bottom line is on the front line. So effectively, and I'm no finance expert, but effectively what happens on the front line, as we sort of said before, cascades in some form, which affects the bottom line. So the first thing to look at is not just be so results focused, and focus on what's actually happening to the front line with customers. There are some statistics out there that actually suggest that organizations that have more suggestions from their staff effectively have a better bottom line. So the more that staff are suggesting from the front line, even though they all may not be implemented, it suggests that the bottom line has more improvements because of what's happening from the front. But your second part of your question was about hard metrics, and what I'll give you, and your viewers are going to be able to remember this because it's very easy to remember. When you look at DIME, under each of DIME, under each of those 4 areas, there are 4 rewards that you can measure. When you're deliberate about service in your culture, your measurement is a return on investment on your staff or your team, being lower absenteeism, lower attrition, higher satisfaction, higher engagement. So that's a return on investment on your staff. That's the first R. The second R, when you create a human connection through customer service interaction, is repeat business and visitation. Customers, when a relationship is formed, will come back. So you can measure the customers that are coming back. That's repeat business because you've interacted with them. That's the second R. When you are memorable, and I talked about talking to your family about this at a barbecue, but when you do something memorable, your customers are more likely to talk about you at family barbecues. And the third R, therefore, is recommendation through positive word of mouth. So your referrals or your recommendations is another thing to look for. And the fourth one is that overall experience. When you've got a brand like Disney who have that end-to-end experience, the fourth R is recognition. And that includes things like, winning industry awards, delivering case studies at conferences, speaking about your organization at the conference. When the competitor benchmarks against you, that's recognition. So, being truly recognized as, oh yeah, everyone thinks of service when it comes to Disney, is that sort of fourth measurement there. So the 4 R's, return, repeat, recommend, and recognize, they're probably the best way I could sum up some of the other metrics that you can look at that aren't necessarily financial.
Fantastic. Very, very cool. That's some great information. So, Chris, we've sort of come to the end of the time now.
Damn.
Yeah, I know it went so fast for you.
That's right.
So we would like to thank you for coming on the show. It's been fantastic having you. How can people get in touch with you? What's your preferred version of being contacted?
Well, look, are most of your listeners in Australia?
Majority of them are,
okay.
Yes.
Very good. Well, anyone really, but I'm gonna call it out right now. My mobile number 0484 346 327. 0484 346 327. Give me a call. Happy with that face-to-face. Emails easily chris@dimecustomerservice.com. Also, there's a website, dimecustomerservice.com. No AU, just .com. And Brendan and I were chatting earlier on too, just to have a look at some of the things or case studies or relevant stuff that I do. I've got a YouTube channel, so type in Chris Smoje, Smoje, pop that into YouTube, and you can access a bit of media, interviews that really bring to life customer service in relevant, newsworthy times. So a number of ways to get in touch, and I'm always open to the conversation.
Cool. We'll put that in the show notes as well. So there's some links. And get in touch with Chris if you've got a business that needs help with this, which is pretty much most. Have the starting point conversation with Chris and see where it goes from there. And any improvement to customer service, customer experience is a good thing in my book. So
the organisations that are really good at service, then call me too, because I love working with the ones that are really good that want to keep moving forward. There's no end date, by the way.
No.
Walt, we talked about Disney. Walt Disney has been dead 52 years now, and his organisation is still progressing, still moving. So,
yeah, fantastic. So, yeah, always room for improvement, regardless of what level you are at. All right, guys. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Brendan.
Thanks.
And thank you to the listener for tuning in to this episode of the Business Marketing Show. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.